as well. Max Olson, theathletic.com, with us on 365 Sports, college football senior writer, and he joins us on 365 Sports. Max, thank you very much. And, man, this could be kind of a separation weekend with the Big 12, Oklahoma State and Texas, TCU, and, of course, Kansas State, and really almost an elimination game in Waco between Kansas and Baylor.
Yeah, certainly. It's as we get deeper into October here, we are going to start to kind of have to talk about, like, all right, who's in this thing and who's in danger of falling out of it. I love these matchups here that we get on Saturday afternoon and at night with Oklahoma State, Texas, and TCU, K-State. Real chance for some very good teams here to prove that they, not just belong in that top 10 conversation, but belong at the front of the race here.
Max, Blake Shapen's going to play. Jaden Daniels not going to play. What do you think that means for Jason Bean and the Jayhawks this game? Do you think that maybe a couple games in he has raised his level enough to get them off this losing skid?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that as rough as the OU game was, I don't necessarily think that Kansas is getting blown out the rest of the way here without Jalen Daniels. I think that certainly the Jayhawks defense has not been good enough this year, and you're seeing that. You obviously saw that last weekend, but I think that Jason Bean is a guy that's you saw him a lot last year. He's a guy that can do things, and when he stepped in against TCU, he was able to make a lot of plays in the second half. So I do think Baylor is still going to have its hands full in some way. I don't think this Kansas team is given up by any means, especially when you're one win away from getting to a bowl game. I think Kansas is, while they're maybe regressing a little bit, I think they're still a pretty tough out.
Max, somebody will be 4-0, be the lone 4-0 team in Big 12 play after the Kansas State and TCU contest in Fort Worth. Obviously, TCU with an impressive come-from-behind win last week to get it done against the Pokes, and K-State's obviously playing pretty well. What are your thoughts on kind of how this game unfolds and what style you sort of expect to see emerge between these two purple teams on Saturday?
Yeah, you go look at that K-State schedule, and they're about to play the three best teams in the Big 12 in consecutive weeks here. So this would be a huge one if they could pull this off, because then you kind of get a little bit of a mulligan maybe down the road here. Or if you can at least split these games against TCU and Oklahoma State, then maybe if you can go beat Texas, you're in front of this whole thing. So I think that obviously the challenge that they present in terms of Adrian Martinez and Deuce Vaughn and one of the best rushing attacks in the country is going to be an interesting change-up for TCU after what they saw last week against Spencer Sanders and Oklahoma State. I love how the Frogs are playing just in all phases. I think it's been just so impressive to see what Sonny Dykes has been able to do with this group and the buy-in you see from them. And I thought that response last week when it didn't start well for them and when it wasn't going right to just kind of fight and claw their way back was huge. It's huge, especially when you're trying to set that culture in year one. So I can't. It feels like a coin flip to me. I don't really have a strong feeling on who's going to win, but certainly I think that right now these are probably two of the maybe two of the hottest teams in the conference and in the country, just in terms of how they're playing right now.
Max, what were your thoughts the last day or two? Brett Yormark at Big 12 Media Days in Kansas City with men's and women's basketball, but the comment about the possibility they might have something in the next week or two, an extension, obviously, because it wouldn't be anything new. It would be an extension. What are your thoughts about what actually that means?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think we need to kind of remember to say, if they pull this off, because it seems like in the way this is kind of being pitched, it's still trying to convince ESPN and Fox to do this and that it's worth $400 million or whatever the number ends up being. But I think, ultimately, bottom line, if you think about the journey that this conference has been on, if you can maintain the money and not take a haircut, then if I told you that would be the case, in August of 21, you'd say, wow, how did they pull that off, without Texas and Oklahoma? So I think if you can get, that extension and get the money to be good enough for 12 members, that would be a pretty big win for the Big 12 in terms of stability. Now, what does that mean for future members and all that? Who knows? But I could definitely see why Brett Yormark is trying to make that appeal to those networks. And of course, there's not a lot of leverage here. Like, there's no alternative. You can't just go right to market if they say no. So either he pulls this off, or they have to wait until the spring of 24 to really dig into this stuff. So curious to see if they can get a deal done. It seems like there's optimism about it, but certainly, as you guys saw with the Big Ten, TV deals don't exactly get hammered out in a month either.
Yeah, to me, Max, if they, he says done in 2 weeks, then it seems like everybody was just happy with the first couple of offers, which this would be the easiest TV negotiation in history.
Yeah, I don't know. That's where maybe I just have a little skepticism just based on what's been going on. But, I think that certainly, like I said, if you can just maintain where you're at with this new membership going forward in the short term, I don't know how long of a deal you do here, but if they can get the networks to agree to that, it does give you some stability and maybe some, just a sense of, how does that compare to the Pac-12 and the ACC? I don't know, but I could see why that feels like the right compromise to pursue right now.
Max, how concerned are you about Spencer Sanders' health going into this game against Texas?
Yeah, that was I'm not sure how much you guys picked up on all that, but that was pretty interesting last Saturday morning, all the rumors about him being out or how injured is he or no one knows. And he's fine and he's starting and he's running for a touchdown on the opening drive. That was pretty wild last week. And, where he's at this week for Texas, I don't know. Certainly when that's one of those teams, just like with Oklahoma, maybe not as extreme as what you saw with Oklahoma and Red River, but that's one of those teams where you don't have experience behind Spencer Sanders. You have, Gunnar Gundy and you have a true freshman. It's going to be tough without him. So I'm sure they're doing everything they possibly can to get him right for a huge game here, because the alternative is, especially when they're not really running the ball, especially well, especially effectively, you kind of need him. You need him to have a chance in this game.
Who is the most irreplaceable starting quarterback in the Big 12? Because a lot of them have already had to go with their backups, won without him and lost as well without him.
I mean, what's the scoring margin without Dylan Gabriel this season?
Right.
Pretty bad, right? I think he's probably the most irreplaceable. Yeah, because I think that, you saw Barry Morton. I thought that Kyron Drones had some good moments. Obviously, some tough plays with some good moments. Like, you feel pretty good about the youth of the quarterbacks in this conference. Like, you feel like if Max Duggan got hurt, obviously they have a lot of trust in Chandler Morris to step into a game. You've seen Hudson Card have to play a lot. I think it's Oklahoma and Oklahoma State that really just don't have that solidified. And certainly you saw the difference. The gap between what you get from Dylan Gabriel in the passing game and Davis Bevel is pretty dramatic.
Max Olson, theathletic.com, with us on 365 Sports.
Max, what do you make of Iowa State?
Man, that's a good question. I think that, first of all, I think they've been more banged up than they've been in past few years. I know they're dealing with a lot of injuries. Certainly at the running back position, that's been pretty glaring. And obviously there's no one guy that replaces Breece Hall, but the run game has not been very scary for opposing defenses so far this season. I think Hunter Deckers is still learning on the job here a little bit. I was pretty bullish on him going into the season as a guy that was ready for this and had some skills that were pretty exciting. But I think he's still learning. Obviously offensively, it's all Xavier Hutchinson. I mean, there's just not. I think he's still leading the country in targets this year. I mean, he kind of has to do everything for them, which is a little bit challenging when you don't have that help in the run game. And then defensively, they're top 10 in stop rate still. They're really good on defense. And I think we had Deuce Vaughn on our podcast this week, and he's like, Iowa State's a really good team. The people who played them, I think, have been pretty impressed, but certainly just not good enough right now in terms of winning close games in the conference. And I think it'll turn for them, but in terms of getting to a bowl game this year, they're going to have to win the games that they're expected to win, and then they're going to have to steal one or two here.
Have they been bad enough to where nobody will talk about Matt Campbell for another job this offseason?
No, I don't think so.
Max, does the Texas hype train take off if they get a win this weekend?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think that it would be interesting to see how much they jump in the polls if they were to win this game. Now, obviously, the stats and census standards, it sort of affects how impressive a win would be.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think in terms of what they're working with on offense right now, and you saw it against Iowa State in a game that was probably closer than people expected. But I'll say this every week. I mean, just what they have with Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, it's pretty special. And I think when you pair that with Xavier Worthy and what they're able to do in the passing game, like, it does make Quinn Ewers' job not too tough. I think the O-line's been better than I expected, and defensively they've been good enough. So, I mean, if you're a Texas fan right now, you probably do feel like you've at least got the dudes to get to Arlington. Now it's just a question of can Ewers be consistent and can they win close games?
And sometimes you need a break, and they got one when Hutchinson just panicked and dropped the long ball that might have been a walk-in touchdown, and they forced the turnover. So you got to force it as well.
That's a matter of Hutchinson was worn out. I mean, it's a long game, and he's getting the ball a lot. He's hitting big plays all the time and stuff. And yeah, it's just sometimes you get that break, and then obviously the fumble after that is a tough one for Iowa State fans, but and certainly questionable. But yeah, you're right. You definitely need some lucky breaks along the way.
Max, is the Alabama dynasty over as far as we talk about overreactions this week in college football? And how much did you enjoy, like most people, just the atmosphere, the pageantry, if you will, of that game in Knoxville last weekend?
I mean, don't you guys wish you were there?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, it just looked incredible to be in that stadium. I know David Ubben being there. He said it's one of the best games he's ever seen in his career, his life doing this. I mean, I don't believe it. I bet everybody there will remember that one as an all-timer. It was a lot of fun to watch. And, guys, I'm not going to say the dynasty's dead by any means, but it is interesting. I mean, we've got 3 games now, Tennessee, A&M, and Texas, where you'd say, Alabama's not bad, but they don't look a lot better than the team they're lining up against. And, certainly Tennessee was able to hit them, their flaws in the secondary and some of the areas where they're just, not as elite as Alabama usually is. But, Bryce Young's really, really good. Jahmyr Gibbs is really, really good. They're still kind of figuring out some stuff. But, yeah, it's interesting that there's been a couple games now where you just sort of feel like, man, they're very talented, but maybe the standard is just so high with all these national championship teams they've had that you just feel like they're not quite as scary as you kind of expected them to be.
Max, thank you as always. Have a great weekend. Enjoy another weekend of great college football. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
Max Olson, theathletic.com, with us on Thursdays.